Welcome back, everyone. Let's now head over to the National Assembly, where the Senate and the House of Representatives have finally passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, approving electronic transmission of results. Well, the Senate adopted the report of a conference committee which approved electronic transmission of results and direct primaries after it constituted a 7-man conference committee to meet with members of the House of Representatives Conference Committee to harmonize the differences in the Senate and House versions of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Now, with the successful harmonization of the bill, it means the National Assembly has completed the process of amending the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The clean copy is expected to be sent to the President subsequently for his assent. And to discuss this, Senator Gaya is the Chairman, Senate Committee on INEC, joins us from our Abuja studio. And right next to him is Mr. Clement Nwankwo, is the Director of PLAC and an election observer. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. I know that the Anambra supplementary election...
Good evening, Nigerians.
Good evening. I know the Anambra supplementary election is one of the biggest stories in the country today, but then the National Assembly passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, sort of like going pari passu with what's happening in Anambra, so to speak. So let me begin with Senator Gaya regarding what you've seen play out in Anambra, but pre-election, during election, and I don't know whether to call this post-election as it were, but the election is still on. So what has been your assessment, really, of the Anambra governorship election as the chair of a Senate committee on INEC?
First of all, I'm impressed with the performance of the INEC Commission for trying to do the best they could during this election. Most Nigerians and some of us also believe that this election may not be free, fair, and credible, and maybe because of the insecurity situations in that terrain, we felt that it was difficult to even hold the election. But we had to invite the INEC chairman and all his commissioners and to the Senate, and we discussed the issue of insecurity, whether they could be able to hold that election or not. But they assured us that yes, they could hold the election, and I'm happy the election has taken place, and they are doing the supplementary one today, which I think must have been concluded by now. So really I appreciate the effort of the Commission by doing their best. And I think they used part of this transmission of some results. That's why most of Nigerians, by Saturday evening, they've already known who is the winner of the governorship election. So actually this one local government election which took place today didn't make much difference.
Well, you know, Senator Gaya, INEC is always quick, especially when we speak with Mr. Okoye, to say, well, what they do is upload and not transmission electronically. They always use that term, that they're doing electronic upload. But I haven't heard your assessment. Let me ask Mr. Nwankwo still on this, because I remember that we had a conversation about this time last week about your expectations and perhaps your fears ahead of this election. So haven't seen the one on the 6th and then today's supplementary election. What is your assessment, recalling the fears that you had?
Well, I think it's always going to be a challenge with supplementary elections where elections are not concluded. And today, I think the biggest concern was, of course, the late start of polls, the violence that took place. If you recall, in the main elections, there was really very little incidents occurring. But today, there was violence and there were incidents that were not previously seen. I think also when you look at today, the polling was delayed in several places, and I think that we need to get, and we have to understand why, but of course logistics is always an issue. But looking at the overall performance, I think in the light of the challenges and the insecurity created by different combination of actors, INEC and the people of Anambra State must be commended for taking this past the goal line. But certainly, this is not the kind of environment we should see in an election. And I think this country needs to be able to get past an election that is overwhelmed by violence, by logistics challenges that sometimes confronts the Electoral Commission, and by the deployment of factors that sometimes hinders our elections. But I think ticking off Anambra as concluded helps us to look ahead towards the next elections, and hopefully Anambra is the beginning of a test run on a larger scale of the beavers that INEC is introducing. And I'm sure that talking about the electoral bill that both the House and Senate approved today, that the issues of implementation of the several provisions of that bill or the act when the president signs it, and we hope that happens quite quickly, will become important for our electoral process looking ahead.
You know, I think the passing of the bill by the Senate and the House at this time presents a very good opportunity for us to assess, you know, the content of that Electoral Act Amendment Bill against the conduct of elections, how it will improve our elections. For example, what we saw in Anambra. So, Senator Gaya, if you could tell Nigerians, really, I mean, we know about the electronic transmission of results and the direct primaries provision, but when you bring this amendment bill and then you look at what has played out in Anambra State, in reality, how does this amendment, how do you see it improving some of the issues that we saw play out during the election in Anambra State?
Well, first of all, the essence of amendment of any act is to improve on the present situation of realities of election process. The act was made, or the amendment of the act was made based on our experience during elections, the problems we face, the problem that INEC faces, the problem even the voters faces during the election. So therefore, an act is raised in order to bring an amendment to the act in such a way that it will be much easier, more credible, and more transparent for people to hold elections at various locations or at their constituencies. So that's one of the major reasons for this amendment. And in most cases here, it plays whereby the issue of using of electronic machines or electronic gadgets for elections, it helps a lot. You remember last time when we introduced card reader, most of people were against the card reader because they felt that it's going to be used for manipulation of result. But that card reader helps in determining how many people come to a polling unit and how many people were really there during the voting. In other times when we don't have a card reader, 10, 20 people can come to a polling unit, and later the result that 500 people were there and elections was made and the social number goes to a favored candidate. So, but when we introduce card reader, it became difficult. We found that in most polling units, you get less than 500, unless we're in the cities where really people were who register in that location. So definitely that's another advantage. And when it comes to the collation of results, it's now easier and bring peace when results are transmitted. You find that when results were transmitted for this issue of Anambra elections, by afternoon or evening, people have already known how the trend of the election is going on. So therefore, people now, the winners now are determined even before the end of the final collation, and therefore it brings peace. So when you know that your party is losing sadly, you have no basis of making any trouble. And when your party is winning, you know that you make sure you maintain the peace in that state so that the results are announced for you to be declared as the winner. So therefore, this electoral helps a lot. And thirdly, when we introduce these primaries, which we said that in the next elections, primaries will be conducted directly with the supervision of the INEC, because we are going to the register of the political parties during those primaries, because I believe that will help, because we now went for a drive for members to join our party. They got a membership card. So the only you can give them a right is for them to vote a candidate that they really wanted. I was a product of direct primaries in 1991 when I contested for governorship. People came to my constituencies and voted for me simply because they like me as a young man, and I've given them an agenda which I believe if I become governor, I'll implement those, and people were accepted. And during those primaries, they came at ward level in mass and voted for me to become the candidate of that party, NRC, at that particular time.
So,
and
Senator
after
Gaya,
the announcement of the candidate for the election, you
right.
find that those who voted you to become a candidate, they now work hard to support you during the general election. It makes you have more people campaigning for you, because for anybody who voted for him, you make sure that he extends that that courtesy to make sure that his candidate wins in the general election. So I believe in the Anambra election, yes, there is an improvement, but there was the issue of insecurity in that locations. That's what matters, and that's why we have to, the security agents were used to make sure they subvert any kind of crisis.
Let me rephrase this, Senator Gaya. If I could just rephrase
yes.
it in another light. So if that amendment bill, which has been passed now, if it was already signed into law before the Anambra election, the November 6th Anambra election, and this supplementary election that held today, would it have combated the issues of logistics, mobilization, the issues of security, and low voter turnout, which you have talked about? Would this bill, if it were a law already, would it have adequately sorted those issues?
It would have made a lot of changes, because even on the issue of the way the election is conducted, the issue of transparency, the issue of trying to make sure that people come out to participate. You know, the turnout is very low, but I think also that depends on the mobilization and the kind of candidate we have for the political parties, because in some places where you have, I didn't say these candidates are not sound, but where you have more sound and credible, the candidate comes out more. In some places, you have difficulties because of insecurity. People didn't come out to vote, like in Anambra. It's not mainly the issue of candidate. But when at least this electoral power has been passed, I'm sure it would have enhanced the position of the election in Anambra State. And that's another bill that we are trying to get it passed, which will also help tremendously to the conduct of the election, is the Electoral Offences Commission. Most people commit an offense during election or after, and they are not brought to book. But right. When this bill is passed, it also talks of offenses to punish even those who are either electoral officers or even anybody who creates trouble during at the venue of the elections or at the polling units or at the collation center will be punished under the law. So therefore, that will also help a lot, and we're working hard now to complete the Electoral Commission offenses bill, which will certainly help in trying to have sanity during elections.
So that's another one to look forward to, Senator. But let me take this back to Mr. Nwankwo.
Yeah.
I mean, time and again, I've heard people say our problem in Nigeria, our challenge really is not laws, that we have a lot of laws, sound legislations, that our challenge is in implementing them. So when you see that the National Assembly has again passed another bill for electoral practice or the conduct of elections in Nigeria, and then you look at the conduct of election we saw with the existing laws, where really lies the problem? Is it with the laws, with the implementation of those laws, or what exactly?
Thank you, Coyote. First of all, to say that the significance of what happened in the National Assembly today is really deep. What you did see in the National Assembly was a repeal and reenactment of a new law to guide elections in Nigeria. So it's not like you put an amendment bill. It's actually a repeal to the old bill and reenacted into law a new bill, and that would come into effect once the president assents to it. Yes, you're right, there is a question of implementation, and I think that's the next phase for a lot of us who are following the electoral process. How is this new electoral law going to be implemented? What are the responsibilities under the law? As we speak, there has to be a full analysis of the new law by the Electoral Commission, by the National Assembly, and all the stakeholders to see what are the responsibilities in the law for everyone who is involved with the elections. The distinguished Senator and Chairman of the INEC Committee, and I must really, in this program, commend his ability to lead this process to passage of the new electoral bill. I think his leadership was incredibly good, and I think that the leadership that was provided by the chair of the House Committee, Honorable Aisha Duku, both of them working together is what has brought us to where we are today, and we really must express a deep gratitude to both chairmen with respect to what has happened. But looking at the bill, I think that there are different issues. The Senator has mentioned the aspect of the bill respecting direct primaries. I think always when you look at the issue of how nominations are made and candidates have emerged, I have been involved with the electoral process and the National Assembly for quite a while, looking at the amendments that were passed in 2010, the 3 or 4 other amendments that were made to the Electoral Act subsequently. None has left out the issue of Section 87, which is on how candidates emerge. That has always been controversial, and the challenge there is, how do you deal with human behavior? How do you deal with rules that parties establish? How do you deal with the party's constitution and ensure that the parties are not hijacked by those who can pay for the parties or pay for the use of the parties, as we have seen? And I think that that's the point you make, Coyote, the human element to implementation of the laws. And most times what you have found, and that's what you have seen with the issue of whether it is direct or indirect primaries, is that it is seized by those who can pay for it, and they begin to manipulate it. And so level playing field doesn't exist. Proper candidates cannot emerge. Candidates who can win election for the parties do not emerge. And so you see desperation on the field amongst politicians, and that results in different kinds of electoral offenses, whether it's vote buying, thuggery, violence, and all sorts of challenges. Of course, you do have the challenge on the part of the election management body, that it has to constantly be confronted with the problem of logistics. If you look back to several elections, as far back as 2007 even, which was really a very bad election, on to 2011, 2015, 2019, logistics is always a challenge. So the expectation we all have now is that with a new law, the election management body is able to sit down and decide what is it that he's been doing in the past that needs to be changed, needs to be reformed. And he needs to do that with stakeholders, with those who have seen elections come through several years, and work out how best to ensure that some of these repeats of challenges do not occur.
You know what's quite interesting, Mr. Nwankwo?
What happens to political parties?
You know what's quite interesting, Mr. Nwankwo? I mean, that amendment is not even law yet, and there's controversy already. Just moments ago, the APC Tripartite Committee met with Vice President Yemi Osinbajo at the State House, and it would appear as though the governors, as it were, are against this direct primary provision in the bill. So let me ask Senator Gaya, I'm not sure if you know the outcome of that meeting yet, but perhaps you saw this coming already. And it looks like maybe the National Assembly members and perhaps the governors are in for an impasse, as it were. Did you get the buy-in of the APC Tripartite Committee regarding this direct primaries? Because what they're saying is it leaves the party with no option, just saying you have to go direct and no other option.
Well, first of all, from what you said, we had a meeting at the party caucus meeting, and the essence of that meeting is internal, to discuss internal issues within the party in order to strengthen the position of that party. And actually, the meeting was done, and we actually left the meeting happy and satisfied. And I believe there is nothing like the issue of governors versus senators or versus National Assembly members. That's not the case. The issue is that we wanted the democracy to go down to the grassroots. So that's what Mr. President Buhari has been saying. Take the grassroots report, take the party down to the people, because they are the people that came up and brought us into office. And we need to give them the responsibilities also to choose their leaders. And by doing the direct primary, it means you are allowing the people to choose their leaders. And in direct primary, it means you have to go around to every ward and campaign. So if you are not sure of yourself or you are not popular, you will simply from day one know that there is no need for you even to contest, because direct primaries means getting close, getting to your people.
Senator
and let
Gaya,
the people vote the candidate.
so the question now would be...
Instead of the party, just...
Pardon me, let me just put this in. You can add that as we wind down. So, because they say that the final decision lies with President Muhammadu Buhari on the direct primaries provision. So, just to be clear, did you have the buy-in, the support of governors and the president in making this decision?
Well, I believe the next person to deal with the bill is President Muhammadu Buhari, and I believe this bill is his baby, because he is always a grassroots man, and he always believed in giving the grassroots the opportunity to choose their leader. It was the grassroots that chooses President Muhammadu Buhari. It is the power of the grassroots that people really, others that supported him and make him to win the election. So therefore, I believe President Buhari is going to endorse this position, because he has been saying that give the power to the people. And that's what we did. We gave the power to the people at the grassroots. Any category member of the party is entitled to vote for a candidate he wants. And that's why the party last, or this year, went on for additional drive for membership. And we have got members in a party who have registered, and that means giving them the now opportunity to choose who they wanted. So I believe there will be not much problem. I believe Mr. President is going to leave a legacy, because this bill that is being passed today, it shows a different view of election process.
Well, Senator Gaya, I wish we had more time, really, to delve into some of these nitty-gritties.
We go by the laws in the bill, I'm sure we'll have a credible and fair elections in the 2023.
That's certainly the hope. Senator Kabir Gaya, the Chairman, Senate Committee on INEC, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. And Mr. Clement Nwankwo, who's the Director of PLAC and Election Observer. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you on